we believe that being a defender requires more than building shooting skills on a range. It's also a development of the heart, mind, body, and spirit. Join us as we explore what it truly means to be a defender in your training and in your everyday life. Welcome to Defenders Live. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Defenders Live. I'm your host, Laura Thorson. We're back again on a Wednesday night, and I'm so glad that you're with me. Welcome, and thank you for attending. If you're new or watching this as a replay, welcome as well. We're so glad that you're here, and go ahead, drop in the comments where you're watching from. We always want to hear from you. So tonight, Shavonne Thompson is going to be on, and she is quite an extraordinary person, someone that I have grown to really look up to. Although I don't think she sees herself as extraordinary, she is incredibly brave and candid in sharing her own story and struggles. And she gave up an extremely lucrative career to dedicate her life to helping others, specifically first responders and veterans. So you'll see in this interview that she's also no nonsense, which I also appreciate. And just as a side note, if you like this interview, mark your calendars for December 13th. She will be back on the 13th of December live to answer any questions that you might have. And we're going to dig a little bit deeper into her life's passion, helping first responders and veterans heal from addiction and trauma. In the meantime, enjoy this interview with Shavonne Thompson of Throttle and Thrive. Shavonne Thompson grew up in Ventura, California, in a suburban middle-class family. Her childhood was filled with love, soccer games, playing with her siblings, and attending church. When she was 13, her older brother Nick introduced her to alcohol, and shortly thereafter, marijuana. On one hand, she was a soccer star, a straight-A student, and a churchgoer. And on the other hand, she was manipulative, sneaky, using drugs, and starting to be promiscuous. Shavonne graduated high school with honors and went on to attend USC, where she earned a bachelor's and master's degree, both in civil engineering. After graduation, her alcoholism intensified, even though she was involved in church and 2 Bible studies. She was truly living a double life. In January 2013, the Lord spoke to Shavonne very clearly, and she reached out for help. Through the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, she was able to heal and get her life back on track. As she grew in sobriety, her faith blossomed and her spirit truly came alive. In 2021, a prophet revealed her kingdom assignment to open a drug and alcohol rehab facility. As she pursued this calling, she discovered that God wanted her to serve first responders and veterans through a men's-only facility. Shavonne quit her 13-year-long career in commercial construction to launch Throttle and Thrive. The treatment center opened on May 8th, 2023, and has been changing lives one day at a time. So let's welcome Shavonne onto the show. Hey there.
Hi, how you doing?
Great. Thank you so much for coming on. This is a story and a topic that we have never had on the show before. So I'm so fortunate, I feel, that I could get you to come on the show.
Yeah, well, I'm honored and grateful to be here. Thank you for having me.
So let's start with, I was looking through your website, Throttle and Thrive. First of all, where does that name come from? Why Throttle and Thrive?
Sure. So it refers to throttle like a throttle body on an engine. And it's an analogy to sobriety. And myself being an alcoholic, I'm an all or nothing kind of person. I either do something completely out there, 100,000%, or not at all. And so with a throttle body, you have to learn to control the amount of fuel or power applied so that you get the right amount of output. And I think that's very true in our lives, especially for me as an alcoholic. I had to learn that emotional regulation. I had to learn that middle ground. I had to learn how much energy or fuel to put into something to get the right amount of output. And I believe that once we can learn that on all levels, emotionally, physically, relationally, in our careers, etc., then we can really learn to thrive as well. So it's kind of like a recipe for success.
That's really cool. I'm glad that I asked that question now because I was not sure at first what that actually meant. And I know that you welcome in first responders and veterans. Now, tell me the reason behind that. But that sounds exactly like what some first responders um, operate like all or nothing. Like they're either adrenaline filled in their job and going, 100 miles an hour, and then they have to go back to their, families at night and then decompress, and so it's like it's all or nothing kind of job, isn't it?
Absolutely. And first responders are typically almost kind of stuck in that flight or fight response, in that state
Mhm,
of adrenaline, in the state of high alert. They're always watching
mhm,
the door. I
mhm,
observe them in our house, where they sit and how they position themselves. It's really
mhm,
interesting. They are continually on state of alert. So that's something that we work on here, trying to get them more in touch with their parasympathetic nervous system, get them to be able to step into just more of a mental state of relaxation and learning, even, especially if they're going to be going back to work, how to toggle on and toggle off that state of high alert. Because when they're at work, absolutely, they've got to be on. They are actively saving lives. But when they're, say,
right.
at home or eating dinner, it's or trying to go to sleep, and sleep is one of the biggest issues, being
Mhm,
able mentally to come down and be able to
mhm,
get into that relaxive state. And
mhm,
sometimes it can be an imbalance of other things, cortisol, the amygdala. There's so many factors that go into it. But why are we a first responder program? Several different reasons. One of them is that when I built out this program, it was built actually as essentially general population initially, but it was built as a militant boot camp style treatment center. That's just how I
mhm.
am. I went to school for engineering. I worked in construction for 13 years. I was a superintendent, wore a hard hat, steel toed boots, built a lot of LAX airport, built a hospital, prison. And that's just kind of my personality. I'm a no nonsense, get to the point, quit your whining. I'm not going to endorse your BS. Like,
Uh-huh,
you need to put in the hard work. And so um, the militant boot camp style program was already here. And then when I discovered that I should only serve and exclusively serve our first responders and our veterans, all I did is change that one word on the website. I added exclusively serving first responders. That was really the only thing I changed, because the program had already built in a way to cater to this demographic specifically, which I'm so
mhm.
excited about. And I love serving them. And on side note, if it was a general population treatment facility, I think I probably would have gone out of business already, because I
Oh,
don't cater to so much of the general population. We're a very conservatively minded treatment facility. We have traditional values, and those are
mhm,
definitely something that is a large part of what we do here. And so it has been amazing to be able to bond with the first responders and have
mhm,
shared values, shared vision,
mhm.
just shared values, I think, and shared traditions has really been
Yeah, and
amazing.
I think then you're going to attract those kinds of people that share those beliefs and values, right? So, have you
Mhm.
found that that's what's happened? And so then the people that you are most wanting to reach out to are responding to your message.
Absolutely. Some of it too has just been like naturally, they didn't know that we were conservative, or they didn't necessarily know who we were or what we were about. But then they come here and they're like, oh, I can open up about what I really think and how I really
Mm,
feel. And you're not going to
yeah.
judge me for being unvaccinated. I'm like, I'm unvaccinated too.
Yeah,
So it's actually been really wonderful to connect with everyone that we serve on that level of
that's
being
cool.
patriotic, of loving this country, of upholding the Constitution, and being against some of the, ultra liberal, far left nonsense, especially anything related to defund the police. We're actively against that, because
Yeah,
obviously we are
obviously.
tremendously in favor and supportive of law enforcement. We love law enforcement and we're grateful for them. So it's been an honor to serve them.
That's awesome. I noticed on your values and mission statement on your website, it says, "We are here to serve. More importantly, we are here to fight for you. We will go into the battle together side by side. We are created to come alongside you, teach you, strengthen you, and help you heal and recover. We will help you fight and win your battles spiritually, emotionally, and physically. You will learn to pick up the tools and use them for yourself. We will empower you to take dominion over your life and break free of the strongholds or the forms of bondage that have kept you from living the life you were created for. We believe that change is possible. Like, I literally get goosebumps reading that. That is so powerful and what so many people need right now. I think to know that somebody's coming alongside them, like they don't need to be talked down to or coddled. They just need somebody to stand alongside them and
Mhm.
help them walk that path. You know what I mean? They just need the tools and they can do it.
Absolutely, and I
Yeah.
wrote everything on the website myself, so I'm
Oh,
really
well,
passionate.
well
Yeah.
done.
Thanks. It's just part of what we believe here that people struggling with substance misuse, they're not bad people. They're just sick people trying to get well. And sometimes they need tools and they need help. And I needed help and I still need help to this day. And it's the
Mhm,
community of people and the influences that I have in my life and the voices that I listen to and the people that I let speak into my life that help me on the path that I'm on that encourage me when I have a bad day. And
mhm,
honestly, our clients come in here so broken and at
mm,
the end of themselves. And most of them come in here severely suicidal. And it's heartbreaking, but because we get to be with them 24/7, especially when they're first here, we are literally checking on them every 20 minutes, which sometimes is a little annoying, but it's for their safety. We are literally with them and we're in the battle. And just like when they go to work, they put on all their PPE. We start to teach them from an emotional and a spiritual standpoint of like, hey, are you showing up naked? Would you show up naked to work? Why are you
mhm,
showing up naked to this emotional and spiritual battle? And they're like,
mm.
what are you talking about? And so
Yeah.
we teach them about the tools. Particularly, we teach them from Ephesians chapter 6, the armor of God. And we
Mhm,
teach them how to battle in this spiritual realm. And we teach them that anxiety is not something to be medicated away by pharmaceuticals, but rather it's an actual battle and law
mm.
enforcement and fire, they've seen the evil in this world. They know firsthand that it exists. So we start to teach them about the unseen battle that they've experienced. They've seen it. And so
Oh,
it's
it's
not
very
hard
real
to
to them. Yeah.
teach them about it because they know and we're actually putting words to what they've already experienced. And so bringing them into that light and that awareness and the light bulbs start to click
Mhm,
and it's incredible. I mean, I've literally had multiple clients. I had one come into my office and hand me his suicide journal after being here about 2 weeks. And he's like, I don't want to die anymore. And thank you. And he's just in tears. He's like, I was writing this to my daughters and they're little tiny young girls. And he's like, I was gonna end my life because I had become the monster. I had become the threat. And
mm,
I couldn't bear to see my family suffer at the monster that I was. And through his journey here, we were able to work with him. And it is a long journey. He does have pretty severe PTS and TBI, but we have given him the tools from our little launch pad, gotten him fully sober so that now he can go on to the next step and the next stage and get the healing for his brain and work through those other
mm.
modalities and continue on his journey. And it's been incredible to see him. I mean, to go from absolute desperation to so much better. I mean, he is not by any means 100%. You don't get there in a month. He's just over 60 days at this point, but he's on the right path and it's amazing.
Yeah, yeah. And that's the thing too is, like, you don't go to a facility to get fixed and then you go home and everything is fine after that. I mean, just
Mhm.
like the Bible teaches, it's a journey, it's a process, it's a path, it's a struggle daily, right?
Mhm.
And you, more than anyone, would probably know that.
Yep.
Was there a moment in your past we kinda touched on your story, but was there a pivotal moment in your journey where you turned the corner and saw the light, so to speak, and said, um, "Now I get why I went through all this, and I wanna use this for good."
Yeah, I mean, the initial part of my journey started on January 28th, 2013. That's my sobriety date. And I woke up that morning after a night of drinking and literally had an epiphany from God of, hey, Shavonne, you can either get help or you're going to lose everything that's important. You're going to get fired from work, probably get a DUI, you might go to jail, you might be assaulted, all your friends are going to leave you, your family is going to suffer tremendously. Like you can either go through all that or you can get help. And so I had, at the time I was dating someone and he brought me to AA. And when I got into that meeting of AA and they said the serenity prayer at the end, I was just crying and all these women came up to me and started hugging me and giving me their phone numbers. And so I got into the rooms of AA. I started going to an all women's meeting. I got a big book. I got a sponsor. I worked the 12 steps and I did what they told me because my judgment at that point in time wasn't very good. And I kept doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results, the definition of
Mhm.
insanity. And
Mhm.
so little by little through AA, I was able to get physically sober, which for me was relatively easy, but the emotional sobriety was years and years of hard work. But it pays off. And so many of those tools I still implement today. And that helps me tremendously just deal with the stress of running a small business or, problems with my family or life's challenges or health challenges or whatever comes up. I now have the
Mhm.
tools in place and the resources and the people to be able to deal with it in a healthy way. So
Yeah.
that, and then to answer your question, what was the question again? It was
I was just curious about a pivotal moment, but you kinda touched on that.
yeah.
Yeah.
um
We all have these points in our lives, in various places in our lives where we have a fork in the road, right? And we have to make a
mhm,
choice. And so I'm always
mhm.
curious to hear people's stories about that.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the biggest fork in the road. And then when I was working at the construction company and it was revealed to me that I would be, should be interested in starting my own business and quitting my job. I worked for one of the best general contractors in the nation. I mean, multi-billion dollar company, 9 districts across the United States. We rebuilt the Pentagon after 9/11. I mean, I worked for the top dog and it was secure and they paid me really well and I had amazing benefits and I could climb the corporate ladder and they were in favor of women and wanted to promote me and all of this opportunity.
Yeah.
And to walk away from all of that on
Mhm.
faith and on a word was
Mhm.
quite an incredible journey. But God was there every step of the way, and He just kept showing up until it was undeniably clear that this is what I was meant to do. And now that I get to see the benefit to the clients and the transformation in them, and also the
Yeah.
transformation in my staff and what we're able to do here, and this is just the beginning, this is definitely where I'm supposed to be.
That is so cool to hear because I know a lot of people out there who are in a similar boat that you were in. I was in that boat at one point too, and I did jump off the cliff and I'm no longer employed. I haven't
Mhm.
been for 4 years now, but whether no matter what degree of crazy that is, everybody that goes through that has a leap of literal faith. There
Mhm.
is a leap of faith in which you must step over the edge and operate on faith and say, God, I'm handing this to you. I feel like this is what you called me to do, and I
Mhm.
trust you. And that is one of the most scary yet invigorating things you'll ever do in your life, I think. So kudos
Thanks.
to you for answering the call because you're changing lives.
Thanks. Yeah, I love
Literally.
it.
Yeah.
It's incredible. I mean, there are hard days, there are plenty of struggles, there are plenty of
Oh, yeah.
things to worry about and things to manage and never-ending lists of to-dos. But the best part is seeing the transformation in the clients and then the impact to their families, getting to hug the
Mhm.
wives, getting to,
Mhm.
hug the little girls. They're so precious and, the
Mhm.
children and everyone who's impacted because we don't live alone. Everyone is
Right.
impacted, the family, the
Right.
friends, the extended family. And so getting to see that transformation, it's just makes
Well,
the
and I
heart.
love that you have in some ways lived through that. So you're not just what did they say? You're talking the talk but not walking the walk, so to speak. And it seems like one of the themes behind the treatment that you talk about and the way that you live your life or how you have proven over time of what works is showing up and doing the work every day, and just knowing that it's not always going to be easy, but that you don't have to do it alone. And whatever that work looks like is different depending on what your goals are in life, whether it's addiction or whether it's fitness or whether it's just showing up for your family or something, it could be anything. But the showing up part for people is really hard sometimes. And these guys, I'm sure, they know what it means to show up and do the work from a first responder standpoint, right? Because they're very brave and courageous people. But I
Mhm.
find that typically, and I could be wrong about this, so tell me if I am, but it seems as though those types of people who show up and do that kind of hard work oftentimes don't know how to show up emotionally or spiritually for themselves or their family. They have a harder time with that part of showing up, or don't really have the tools to do so. Am I accurate in that, or
Sometimes, it
sometimes?
depends on the person and the age and some of the demographic things that play into that. But
Mhm.
most of our clients are really willing. And so
Mm.
once we start to show them the tools, they're more
Mhm.
than willing to start using them and engage with them. One of the challenges we face is sometimes the pain is just too great. We have had
Mm.
clients where they've had 30 years of service and they have seen just atrocities. They've seen their coworkers
Mm.
die, they've seen civilians die. There's so much death, especially when they've seen children die. That is usually a huge trigger in general. So sometimes having to look at all of their pain is just too much. And they just want to push it away and push it down and
Yeah.
not open that door. And they really
Yeah.
just want to move on. And so we're
Yeah.
trying to come up with different ways to restructure that because we don't want to put them through looking at every single traumatic event over the past 30 years. I really don't think that that's helpful. But how do we get them to come to a place of peace where we can at least take those larger incidents and bring them down? One of the common analogies is instead of them being in the movie, they're now watching the movie on TV and learning to turn it off. So, teaching them to be able to do that. It's not our responsibility for having that first thought, but it's our responsibility to not have that second thought and engage and replay all of that trauma over and over. And then
Yeah.
also teaching them about some of the tools that they just don't know exist. Like if they've had multiple concussions or been knocked unconscious, they typically have TBI. A lot of times that goes undiagnosed. So, what are the non pharmaceutical, non surgical options for TBI? And there's actually a lot of them out there. So,
Hmm.
TMS, MERT, neurofeedback, brain painting, etc. These are great modalities that are not talk therapy, that are not surgical, non pharmaceutical, that can help the brain rejuvenate itself and help them to learn to, or not learn, but actually heal the brain so that it can process at the proper speed so they're not constantly overwhelmed. And to also get that typical reaction that we see in so many of our clients when they first come in, someone drops a fork on the floor and they just hit the ceiling jumping out of their chair, or a firework goes off and they are just completely distraught. Teaching them
Mhm.
to get back into their bodies, but then also helping them understand that physically they might need healing and additional treatment once they leave here for several months or even up to a year to be able to fully heal physically. And even looking at their blood work, looking at cortisol, looking at testosterone, looking at other maybe non-typical indicators of where they're at physically so that they can heal completely. So that's one of my
Mhm.
main passions, is not just looking at one thing or just
Mhm.
pushing meds on something, but looking at all the different layers and all of the different aspects of who we are as humans and how we can heal physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, all of the different aspects. And it's different for all of our clients, but because we only treat up to 6 people at any one time, we get to know everybody really, really well and we're with them 24 hours a day, pretty much. I mean, I run 3 different shifts of staff, but we're eating lunch with them. I actually pay my staff on purpose to sit with our clients during lunch, in addition to everything else, so that
Wow.
they're really getting to know them and really spending that extra time with them, because so many things are revealed not not during group, not during formal therapy, but in the in between moments. It's
Mhm.
those moments in the kitchen where a client comes up to me and says, "Can you hug me? I just need a hug today." And he's like, "What?" And he's like, "I don't even know why I'm crying. I just need a hug." And I'm like, "Okay, it's okay."
Yeah.
But seeing
Yeah,
that,
that's a really good point, the in-between moments, because you can learn a lot about people
yeah,
just
that's
sitting and
very true.
having a meal with them. Yeah.
That's when typically they actually open up some of
Mhm,
the most times.
mhm.
Yeah.
My heart just feels so, like, I don't know, I got all the feels right now, Siobhan. It just makes me just so thrilled to be able to interview you, to introduce you to my audience, because I know there's a lot of people in my audience that if they don't need the help you provide, they know people that need the help you provide. Um, Now I know something that you're quite passionate about is, some facilities aren't what we think they are. They may have a dark side to them or unethical practices. And I just wanted to give you an opportunity to help people maybe recognize some of those red flags, or how can people know if a treatment facility is good for them or not?
Sure. Yeah, it's a hard one. I'll probably ruffle some feathers with this, but typically, if you're going to a substance misuse treatment facility, it's a detox and residential program. Well, we think of detox like we think of a juice cleanse, like, oh, they're going to detoxify me. Nothing could be further from the truth. Detox in treatment means the doctor's pushing medications so that that client is comfortable and complacent, and the doctor's medical risk is limited as much as possible. That's my personal opinion. I'm not a medical
Wow.
doctor, but that's what
Yeah.
I have seen over and over. So typically, they're going to put the client on blood pressure medication, which is good. But if they're already on it, sometimes they'll even prescribe more. Okay. And then they're going to push Seroquel, which is an antipsychotic. For our clients, that's definitely, it's not needed. It's just not. Maybe at other treatment centers where they're dealing with higher levels of mental illness like schizophrenia and bipolar, maybe that's for them. But at our facility, we don't ever put anyone on Seroquel. The other one is trazodone, which is for sleep. Every single first responder that comes in here, they have sleep problems. They do. It's part of the trauma. It's part of the drinking. It's part of what happens. And when they come into a new facility and they're still on high alert, typically they don't sleep very well the first night or sometimes the second night. We let them just tough it out. They're in detox. So if they need to take naps or whatever it is, we just let them tough it out. But as the days go by and they get into residential, we mandate that they get up no later than 6 a.m. and we don't let them take naps and we limit their caffeine use. Actually, the first time I let them figure it out the hard way. So they'll inevitably drink a cup of coffee at 4 p.m. and then not be able to sleep. And I'll talk to them the next day of like, well, you're normally a 2 cup person in the morning and now you drink a cup of coffee at 4 p.m. Do you see a correlation of why you couldn't
Mhm.
sleep? And their light bulb comes on. They're like, oh, and then they stop drinking caffeine in the evening or the afternoon, and then we get them into a program of regular exercise and we feed them really healthy food, and ta-da, they can sleep. Now,
Yeah.
granted, there are times where they've done EMDR or other things and they will have some sleep issues, but it's usually specifically related to something. And then we start to dive into, well, what's the root issue? What are you facing? What do we need to help you get over? And we don't medicate them. We don't give them sleep aids because we know that if we can set their circadian rhythm correctly and start to reduce their trauma load, they're going to sleep,
Mhm.
especially when they're exercising, eating well, and they're not on screens and they're not exposed to blue light and they're watching the sunrise in the morning. Um,
Mhm.
it actually goes really, really well. But a typical detox, they're going to put the client on trazodone to get them to sleep. It's highly sedative, and in detox, people can actually die. They die of respiratory failure. We're not going to have anyone die here, and we're not willing to take that risk, especially because they want to be comfortable. Like, no, they're in detox. It's uncomfortable. So the first couple nights, maybe they don't sleep, but we're not putting them on trazodone. And then gabapentin is typically also prescribed. That can be an anti-seizure drug, but it is also an anti-anxiety drug. And we use that very, very sparingly. But typically that's just pushed. And people, they come in here, they are at the end of themselves. They're having a hard time. They don't know, and they'll just trust the doctor and they'll take all the pills. And then next thing they know, they leave treatment 30 days later and they're still on all the pills. And then they leave treatment
Yeah.
on more drugs than they came in on,
Yeah.
which is terrible. And so we
Yeah.
actually have had clients that have come in on antidepressants and anti-anxiety drugs. We've had people come in on Klonopin. It's like, okay, why are you taking Klonopin? And they're like, well, I was prescribed it over 10 years ago for a traumatic event that happened 10 years ago. And I'm like,
Wow.
okay, well, your kidneys and your liver are definitely suffering. You don't need to be on it anymore. And have you actually dealt with the trauma and gone through trauma healing and looked at your brain and
Yeah.
done a brain map and all of these things? And they're like, no, what are you talking about? I just keep taking the Klonopin. And I'm like, we need to get you off of that. So we've successfully gotten clients off of Klonopin. We did step it down gradually so it's not a huge shock to their system, and then working on getting them off of antidepressants. I mean, I've had clients come in, I'm like, you're not depressed and you have no reason to be depressed. And they're like, you're right, I'm not depressed. Why am I taking this med? I don't know. The doctor said, so I did it. Like, great. Well, we'll get you off
Oh.
that too, because these meds, what is not talked about is the side effects. And
Mhm.
if you read the side effects, it's right there in black and white. It
Mhm.
says suicidal ideation.
Mhm.
Well, my clients come in, almost all of them with suicidal ideation. You think I'm going to keep them or put them on a medication that's going to cause suicidal ideation? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
So I print it out for them and I show them and I'm like, look, the drug company is telling you it can cause this. You don't want to be on it and you shouldn't be on it. Now, again, I'm not a doctor and I'm not a clinician, and I'm sure there are people who do need to be on certain things, or
Sure.
sometimes for a certain time after a traumatic event, the medications can be helpful, but
Mhm.
not 12 years later when we're starting to see other things like memory issues, coordination issues, neuropathy. I have a good friend of mine that's in his 60s and he was put on an anti-anxiety medication, and 10 years later wanted to get off of it, couldn't get off of it because it was, like Klonopin. And then he went actually to several different detox places and they just kept putting him on more and more drugs until he actually did become suicidal, attempted
Oh.
suicide several times, failed, thank goodness. But today he lives with horrific pain and neuropathy from all of the nerve damage caused by those medications. So I'm very passionate
Wow.
about getting people off of the drugs and into a regular program of healthy living, good sleep, exercise, great diet, and all of the other tools, because they work. They work, or at least like let's try them. And if those aren't working, then let's look
Yeah.
deeper and always treat root cause, not
Right.
medicate the symptoms and just make the symptoms
Right.
go away. Put a band-aid. It just doesn't work.
Band-Aids, yeah. Wow. That's incredible. It's so refreshing to hear your approach to that and, your approach to people in general, because that holistic approach, I think, is so key in so many cases. And, like in many things, people just don't know what they don't know, and they're trusting the authority, whoever that is, and they're
Mhm.
trying to do what they think is right, but they don't know. And so, thank God for you. So then, are there any particular so-called barriers to entry for first responders and law enforcement getting treatment that you could talk about?
The biggest barrier to entry is just the stigma, the psychological stigma of rehab. I mean, I had to even change my brochures because I put rehab on there. Oh no, you can't say rehab, you can't say addiction, you can't say blah blah blah. So I had to put substance misuse, and I have to put a treatment
I
facility and
wondered
things
why
like
you were using those words. Now I know. Okay.
that. Which I'm happy to do. If that makes it easier for people to enter treatment,
Yeah.
amazing. Great.
Yeah.
I think as especially law enforcement, they've arrested people for using drugs or alcoholism, or they've seen domestic violence. They've literally locked people up for that. So for someone to then admit that they have a problem, it's hard. It's a blow to our ego, our self-esteem. I mean, none of us, I didn't want to admit that I had a problem. It didn't. And a lot of people don't exactly know what treatment is, or they don't know what true sobriety is, or they don't know that when I say I'm a grateful alcoholic, that I really mean it. I am so grateful and I love living a life of sobriety. I know that sounds so corny, but to wake up every day and to feel good and to be accountable and to have the dignity and respect and integrity that I have today that I did not have, 10 and a half years ago when I was still out there drinking and all the shenanigans. It's really great now, but the barriers to entry typically are psychological. So we don't want to admit we have a problem. As first responders, they are the people who are there in people's time of need, and they're the rescuers and the heroes. And so for them to then admit that they need the help, I think it's just really hard. And then, of course, some of the departments are still really old school and they don't know how to best help their men. And so I think the fear of losing a job having your badge taken away, having your gun taken away, those are very real fears. So this program is
Yeah.
100% confidential. Anyone can call me at any time. We don't have to tell the department. You can just say, hey, I have a medical issue and I'm taking my PTO and I'll be back in 3 weeks or 4 weeks or whatever it is. But as the problem is becoming greater and greater, and the tragedy of so many of our first responders taking their own lives as a result of not getting help and the trauma and the using becoming just too much. Many departments now have great wellness programs, great peer support, and they want people to get help and they're supportive of that. And more of the departments are seeing substance misuse as a disease, which it is, and not a moral failing, which really it's not. It really is a disease. And so treating it in that manner allows more people to get help, which has been great.
I'm just listening to you in awe. I'm just like, ugh, what you're doing is so important. The founder of Defenders USA, Adam Winch, who you've met a couple of
Mhm.
times, he has over a decade of service in law enforcement. He was in the military before that. And when he heard what you were doing, he just like so supportive. I think the more that I'm hearing, the more I'm excited to share with him even more about the details of what you do, and with the audience as well, because that's exactly part of what the mission behind Defenders USA is. It's not just getting people. We have the left of bang and right of bang in self-defense, right? And we talk about getting training and learning how to defend yourself and having situational awareness and giving you the skills and tools to do that. Okay, that's important. But for people that go through some kind of a traumatic self-defense event, and in your case, we're not talking about civilians, we're talking about law enforcement and first responders, there's still trauma there, right? And
Mhm.
what people don't realize is that once they go through a trauma of some kind, whether that be through having to defend your own life as a civilian or law enforcement or whatever, that changes you forever.
Mhm.
That changes you forever. And I don't think that there's enough significance or talk given to the other side of the fight, right? There's the
Mhm.
fight that you win in the moment and in the battle, but then there's a fight afterwards that many people just don't talk about. And that's exactly the fight that you're helping people get through. And I
Yep.
think that's the most important one, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. Yep. I mean, we have some of our clients come in and they're talking about trauma that they experienced over a decade ago or 2 decades ago, and it's still
Mhm,
haunting them and it's still hurting
mhm.
them. So we place such emphasis on resolving that trauma and bringing it down from that level 9 down to a level 1 or 2, something manageable, and also teaching them trauma lives in the body and
Mhm.
to
Yeah.
realize that it's actually part of them and to come to that place of healing. So yeah, and
So
watching them make progress is the most incredible thing. So,
I can tell it really lights you up. I can tell that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. I don't know, I just sense that, and that brings me joy to see you doing that. I'm so glad you were brave. Uh,
yes.
you were brave in your own journey and brave enough to step up and be the person that these guys need. If somebody that is listening to this knows someone or is that person that needs the kind of help that you provide, what steps can they take? What does that process look like? Where is the facility? Is there more than one? Could you answer all those questions for us?
Absolutely. So our facility is located in beautiful Palos Verdes Estates, California, which is part of Los Angeles. But if you haven't figured it out, I'm not a typical Angelino. We're an anti-woke treatment center, so don't worry. This is for law enforcement through and through on every single level, and all first responders. If anyone wants to come or wants to explore or has a loved one and they'd like to inquire about things, they can give me a call or shoot me a text. My cell phone is 805-701-1309. So you can reach out to me at any time. You can also visit our website, www.throttleandthrive.com, or shoot me an email at info at throttleandthrive.com. However, you'd like to reach out, you can also fill out the contact us form on the website. But basically, just reach out. I handle all of the admissions. reach out to me. I will make sure that who's ever inquiring is the appropriate fit for our treatment facility. If they're not, I'll recommend that they go somewhere else. We do have to have a primary diagnosis of substance misuse. So I do get calls primarily for mental health, and I have different facilities that I recommend those people out to. Just from a legal standpoint, the primary mental health does have to go somewhere else because we're primary substance misuse. And then we do have to verify insurance. We are an insurance-based facility. So that's how everything is paid for, is through medical insurance. We don't have government funding. If you know how to get government funding, please tell me. I would love government money. That would be amazing. But right now, we are self-funded mainly through me and also through medical insurance. So I just need a, ID and medical card to verify benefits. We don't take Medicare or Medi-Cal, unfortunately, which is a bummer, but we do know places that do. And then once we verify insurance, I send out information about what to expect and what to pack and just answer any questions anyone has. If they're local, they just drive here or get dropped off. No one can drive themselves. It makes it way too easy to leave. So get either dropped off by a family member, or if someone is flying in from out of state, which we also do have, then I will go and pick them up at LAX airport. We're about 40 minutes or so from the airport. So I just drive over, pick them up, and then take them here. And then we take them through the intake process, get them comfortable, and they jump into the program. Yeah.
And didn't you say that that you have low numbers on purpose? Did you say 6?
Yes, we max out at 6 clients at
Okay.
any one time. So we're like the
Wow.
small bed and breakfast boutique boot camp of treatment centers.
That's awesome. Cool. Okay. All right. Well, we're going to wrap up here unless there is anything else on your heart or mind that you want to talk about regarding what you do that I didn't already touch on.
I think just taking that first step is the hardest part. Admitting that we can't do it alone. I know we really want to do it alone, and I'm a very A-type person. I'm like, I got this. I can figure it out. I can do it. But sometimes we need someone that has already gone through the journey, and there's no need to struggle and stay in pain. Also, first responders, they're taught and they're trained to identify the threat and take out the threat. And unfortunately, that psychology gets turned around when they start to see themselves as the threat or the monster that's hurting their family, whether it's
Mhm.
through words or actions or whatever it is. So
Mhm.
just know that you are not the threat and your life is worth saving, and we can
Mhm.
help you, and you don't have to live in this much pain. Give us a call, reach out. We have a full staff. We are here to help you and to walk alongside you.
So well said. I mean, I couldn't have ended the show any better. All right, guys. So tell me in the comments, what did you think of that interview with Shavonne Thompson? I so enjoyed watching that yet again. Just a great, great person, a great facility. And I hope that this information can get out to whoever needs it. If you know anybody that could benefit from what Shavonne does, please share this video with them, and let's get people the help that they need. And reach out to me or Shavonne if you have any questions. And like I said before, she's going to be back with us on December 13th, and she will be live during that conversation. So if you have any questions that you want to ask, please feel free to reach out, and be sure to put that December 13th date on your calendar for Shavonne coming back. So a couple things here before we wrap up. I just want to give a huge thank you to all of you who have supported Defenders Live on our new locals.com channel by becoming a paid member. We just dropped episode 3, which I called the Gratitude Sandwich episode. And I'm not even going to explain why I called it that. If you watch it, you'll understand. But that is the episode 3 that just dropped, and Defenders Uncensored. It's part of the Defenders Uncensored series. And if you don't know what that is, Defenders Uncensored is it's a it's fun. It's a fun gathering of the minds packed full of slightly inappropriate humor, lots of truth, and honest conversations about topics that are sometimes considered controversial, but we don't think that they should be. And if you're easily offended or don't have a sense of humor, it might not be the series for you. But come and join us at Defenders Live on locals.com, and you'll get a lot of behind the scenes and behind the curtains conversations that we could never post on YouTube or Facebook. You can search up Defenders Live on locals.com under the Discover tab. So, what's in store for next week? On September 27th, we are going to have Chris Seipert back from Citizens Defense Research. Chris Seipert is an instructor at Citizens Defense Research and a retired Green Beret with a vast medical and threat mitigation experience from multiple deployments overseas. He now works hard to translate his experience and lessons learned into civilian self-protection context in order to help lawfully armed citizens better protect themselves and their loved ones. This will be the second time, I believe, that Chris Seipert has joined us, and he is a favorite on the show. So I'm looking forward to seeing him next week. I hope you guys are as well. He always brings heaps and heaps of good information to us. So look forward to seeing him again and you next week, September 27th at 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Until then, take care.